sometimes aren't, but they're very useful to think through, to plan, to think through the implications of trends. And so that's why we like to do them. They help you think more strategically about what you need to do in your organization. So I know you've heard this a million times, you know it, you feel it. We are at an inflection point. ChatGPT, but more broadly, generative AI that's been, it's not new, generative AI, it's been around for several years now, but I think ChatGPT is that catalyst that's making everyone, all vendors, all of you, all of your customers, your employees, think about, how is this going to impact all roles and, all aspects of society, really, if I'm, no matter what industry I'm in, no matter what domain I'm in, particularly for data and analytics. We did a little poll a couple of weeks ago of the data and analytics landscape, and I would say 98% of the vendors that we polled have some sort of plans around generative AI more broadly, integration with ChatGPT in many cases specifically. And so what you'll see with our trends, they're not all on generative AI, but all of them are mostly going to be impacted by it. And so I'll point that out. There's a couple of places where I think we got the actual percentages wrong because these were all published in October, just before the November announcement. So I'll show you where I think that the timings and everything might be adjusted. And so again, it really is, when you think about predictions, it's the second and third order effects, not necessarily the predictions themselves, and that's what we'll focus on today. Now, the general theme, and a lot of the theme as well around the conference has been around value, how can you drive value, how can you align to impact, how can you make an impact, given your purpose, given the purpose of your stakeholders. And so you'll see that the predictions sort of rally around that topic. Again, demonstrating value, even if you've got S&T compliance or shiny new things, we still have to ultimately deliver value, and that importance doesn't go away. And how do you drive value at scale? If you are a data and analytics leader, it really is, as we've been saying, redefining your importance to the organization. Now, there's nothing wrong with being, focusing on reporting. Reporting is essential to the organization. We know that, it's essential, it's central. But how do you become central to the business strategy? How do you become, and I think with the rising importance of generative AI, the data and analytics leader is the one that everybody is going to be turning to for leadership, for advice, for governance. And so I believe, your role is only up-leveled and you sort of need to step up to that role. And so what are the opportunities to realize value? Well, we'll focus on sort of three topic areas. We'll look at the predicts through three lenses. Of course, first and foremost, talent and how we work. Huge impact we're going to see, around different trends. Trust always is important as the foundation for everything we do. Trust is taking on a completely new and different meaning, again, as we move into this uncharted territory around being a sort of generative AI organization. And then, of course, being DNA and AI native. How can you, as an organization, infuse data and analytics and AI into everything? We've heard a lot about digital natives, right? But really, we're going to, organizations in the future, the ones that lead, are going to be AI, data and analytics and AI native. Infused in every process, infused in every decision, infused in every product, infused across the value chain. How you create value is likely going to be in large part driven by your competency in data and analytics and AI, and by those being infused there. And so first set of predictions, we call them predicts for short, talent and the way we work. But of course, don't forget the humans. And again, huge implications. So you're going to laugh because this first prediction, funny enough, was again published in October, and I think it's already way off. But I wanted to show it to you. By 2026, 5% of workers will routinely use AI against their employers' wishes to complete tasks. Now, we know that just last week, both Microsoft and Google introduced generative AI integration with Office, the Office suite, and with the Google Workplace suite at a minimum. We saw that Google just this morning, I think, announced, or maybe it was yesterday, announced Bard, their sort of competitor to ChatGPT. And so is it really going to be that far out where every worker actually has access to AI, and will it be against their employer's wishes? I mean, obviously we'll have governance, but probably most of us, a year from now, will routinely use AI, even if it's just part of our Office suite, right? I don't know if any of you were in the bake-off yesterday. Microsoft at the end showed some pretty cool stuff. Just generating Excel models on the fly, generating narratives within PowerPoint. Even those minimal things, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be using that, right? And so cool stuff coming. And it's not just workers very specifically. Most of you, if you've been trying ChatGPT, how many of you have been experimenting? I'm guessing most of you, yeah. And probably most of your developers, probably many of the people that are knowledge workers. My guess is your marketers are already using it. But we, even prior to October, predicted that code written by developers or humans would be reduced by 50% due to generative AI code generation models. Of course, affecting the legal profession, by 2026, 25% of first draft contracts and other written documents in corporate legal departments will be generated entirely by AI. Again, I think that's going to be a lot sooner and a lot higher. By 2024, use of synthetic data, this is our world, right? Created with generative AI will have the volume of real data needed for machine learning. Huge impacts on us. Certainly within the short-term period, within a year, you already see the ability to generate DAX code. Again, Microsoft showed that in the bake-off yesterday, just from a natural language question. SQL, Python, you're already seeing that. It's already available, and your developers are probably already using it. So nearer-term use cases and others for DNA. And so what I plan to do, so I should have said, we have 10 predicts to get through. We're not going to go through each one in detail. It's just not possible in 30 minutes. But I'm going to try to focus on what the prediction is, and then what just immediately you should be thinking about it. At the end of this deck, you have it on Conference Navigator. You'll have a list of the predicts notes that you can access for more information. And then at the end of each of those, there's more detailed information about that topic. So just to set that expectation, because to get through 10 and 30 minutes, we can only do them at a high level. But anyway, so what you need to do to think about it. I mean, you're going to be reimagining all work because it will be transformed. And I can see that the data and analytics leader, you as individuals, you will be leading your organization's efforts, if not being the trusted advisor for them. So think about and imagine the impact for all roles in your organization within data and analytics. Again, the developer is the first and foremost one, but content builders, right? Content builders, content consumers, all of those roles will change. How you govern. We had a roundtable on Monday with a group of women CDAOs, and one of them was like, how do you even measure risk? What are the metrics that you use? It was a very interesting observation. I loved that. We don't even know what the metrics are yet for measuring risk, and how are we going to govern? We have a certain set of governance rules right now, a certain set of governance practices governing data and analytics and AI, but all of that likely will change, and so who's going to lead that effort? Most likely you. Planning and assessing for skills and impact, new skills. You heard Daryl, prompt engineers. What's going to differentiate us when sort of many, sort of cognitive analytical tasks are automated? It's really our ability to leverage the technology, get the most out of it. Again, another person commented, which I thought was also insightful in this roundtable that I did. Well, there is a difference between my mom using Google and me using Google, right? So that it's sort of analogous here. People are going, to differentiates us will be how we can really leverage the technology to get what we need. New roles will emerge. We can't even imagine what they will be from now. But again, beginning to think about the impact on your organization, the risks, of course, how you protect them, how that translates into your governance is important. Prediction number 2, and this is again more on the people side. By 2026, 20% of top data science teams will have rebranded as cognitive science or science consultancies, increasing the diversity, in this case, of skills in staff skills by 800%. And that's a really interesting one, because if you think about, again, as AI or data and analytics becomes native, you become a data and analytics native organization, you're really going to need to align with talent like computational linguistics, neuroscientists, anthropologists, biologists, because the capability will permeate through all aspects of your organization. And so, first and foremost, we always say, AI and data and analytics teams should be tied at the hip. That doesn't change, but you might, increase your collaboration with other cognitive and other sciences that may be in your organization, or hire specifically for that. Some of the top the data science teams that we see, in fact, staff based on these sort of varied sets of skills. I can tell you our data science team in our team is headed by a person who has a PhD in philosophy. And he chooses people, he's got a computational linguist on the team, and he chooses people specifically for these kind of varied backgrounds and just their ability to think and be curious and think out of the box. And that's really what we need now, right? And so if you do that, each person is going to bring with them, each discipline will bring with them different tools, different methodologies, different processes. And so you really want them to be sort of an integrated team. And so you'll have to think about how you break down those silos. But a really interesting approach that we see having great impact. And so we predict we'll see more of that. Prediction number 3. By 2026, 50% of BI tools, analytics and BI tools, will activate their users' metadata, offering insights and data stories with recommended contextualized journeys and actions. Okay, so what do we mean by that? So active metadata, let's parse that one first. What we mean by active metadata is metadata that's coming off of off of your data sources, off of your users' actions, being able to apply sort of continuous analytics across all the ways that data is used and how, who, what, when, where, and how, so that you can gain a much deeper contextual understanding of the situation to automate insights. Now, again, if we think about the generative AI disruption that we're seeing, we've been talking about dynamic data stories, dynamically generated insights within analytics and BI platforms, within data science and machine learning platforms since 2014. It's just that advances in generative AI, advances in large language models have allowed us to even, scale those capabilities and make them much more human-like even further. And so the key, though, to being able to do that is gaining much more specific metadata about the user behavior and their context that will help us generate those stories. So think about this. Imagine instead of your users going to a dashboard every day to interact with their analytic content, to find what's going on in the business, to explore different challenges or opportunities that they see in the data, instead of having to do that and having to have the skill to do that, and somebody would have had to create that dashboard for them based on fixed business questions. Imagine that person just gets an automated dynamic data story based on their role, their context, what's important to them at that moment in time. We didn't see that in the bake-off yesterday, did we? But at least one vendor on that stage, and that's Tableau, has the capability, and they'll be introducing that later through their acquisition of Narrative Science. And we'll start to see that more and more. Again, I told you, like 98% of the vendors that you see on the show floor, I'm sure there's like ChatGPT wash everywhere. I didn't actually walk the floor and carefully look. But anyway, you will see that roll out in the user experiences of analytics and BI platforms. And we always say, I love these quotes, maybe stories are just data with a soul, or no one's ever made a decision because of a number, they need a story. And whether they need a value story, which I love, or they need a story in the data. And so these dynamically generated stories are within short to midterm deployments. So using metadata, and we have another prediction on metadata, using more deep metadata about user experience and behavior is going to be the key to those dynamic data stories. Accessing new generative AI capabilities, of course, we've talked about that. Plan for new skills and roles. One of the things, this last bullet about training is so interesting. Oftentimes we think, okay, we're going to automate insights to our users. We don't have to really train them anymore. It's almost the inverse. The more you automate, the more you have to explain where things came from, because now it's mostly black box insights and people need to know how the power that they have, how to use it, et cetera. Great. So moving on to the second set of predictions, nothing happens without trust as the foundation. And again, that's your job in this room. Trust is, basically the buck stops here with trust in data. If fake news, it's really fake data. It's our challenge in this room. And so, here again, I think this one we pulled from outside of DNA, and it's by 2027, 80% of enterprise marketers will establish a dedicated content authenticity function to combat misinformation and fake material. Now, one, again, published before ChatGPT, and I think it's going to be a lot sooner and probably higher than 80%. And it's not just going to apply to marketing content, right? It's going to be all content that's created through generative AI. We also have another prediction related to this, that by 2025, 30% of all marketing content will be generated by generative AI and then be subject to some sort of processing that can identify incorrect information or offensive information. And so that's probably low as well, because your marketing department is probably already using tools like Jasper and Unbound to write their social media posts or write product descriptions or write taglines. They're already probably being used, right? But we aren't just maybe necessarily putting in place the governance that we might need to do. And so, think about how you might govern synthetically generated content in general, but specifically marketing. You may have to deal with reputation management and misinformation. I mean, Google at least claims they've delayed their release of Bard and generative AI mainly because of the potential risk to their reputation. You will face that as well, right, as you expand your use of these capabilities. And certainly, again, long-term strategic impact, not just on marketing, but on all roles, sales, customer service, finance, all aspects of your organization, and particularly the product itself. Predicts number 5, by 2026, 20% of large enterprises will use a single data and analytics governance platform to unify and automate discrete governance programs. Now, what this one really is saying is that, a consolidated top-down approach to governance, consolidated, often is not very successful because you face significant user resistance and therefore lack of compliance. And what's really needed, because we do have increasingly distributed data, distributed analytics, as we embed AI or as AI is created in the lines of business by business people, governance is going to be an increasing challenge. So you're likely going to have some sort of distributed governance practice and set of processes, of course, a whole new set of them, as we said, but that connect rather than consolidate, with sort of the franchise model, back to what Kurt was talking about in the keynote, where you might have regional variations, but that there's significant collaboration between the different nodes, sort of hubs and spoke. And so, being able to connect and govern data and analytics assets, data, lineage, models, calculations, use of generative AI in general across business domains and centralized functions is going to be a whole new critical area to focus on. So again, connect, not consolidate, is the advice here. So prediction number 6, by 2026, organizations adopting active metadata practices, again, we talked about that a little earlier, will increase to 30% across data and analytics to accelerate automation, insight discovery, and recommendations. So again, here, I think this is going to be a little low because we're going to need to have active metadata to be able to support the new and broader user experiences, conversational user experiences that we will likely need to deploy. And so here, we're talking about an enterprise metadata strategy. Now, what we have seen is across data management, metadata access, collection, analysis, alerting has been embedded in more and more parts of the data management ecosystem, and data management tools and data integration. And of course, data catalogs play a key role here, in analytics and BI platforms. And so trying to come up with an enterprise metadata strategy that sort of unifies all of them or aligns them at a minimum and aligns to business outcomes is increasingly important. Think about how you can use augmented data management, which is machine learning automation of many of the data management tasks, to free up time for strategic tasks. For example, we've seen again in our bake-off yesterday, Click showed natural language user-generated descriptions of metadata for your data catalog. If you start to use some of those generative AI capabilities for that use case, that's pretty cool. Probably a relatively low risk. I mean, of course, you have to have a human in the loop with all of this, but a really interesting use case to support your enterprise metadata management strategy. Accumulating increasingly enriched metadata from diverse systems and sources, again, assisted by the fact that most of your data management infrastructure, or your data management ecosystem, is increasingly incorporating metadata collection and analysis, active metadata capabilities. So activate that metadata. Leverage dedicated and embedded metadata management solutions, again, across your ecosystem that you may have, coordinating across them. Again, the data catalog generally plays a key role here. And this will form the foundation of some of the other predictions around automated data stories, because now you'll have the detailed context to do some of that automated data storytelling capabilities. Now, moving on to the last segment, I'll have to pick up the pace. So being data and analytics native. And that means thinking like a business. As I said, infusing data and analytics, being instead of digital native, or in addition to digital native, being analytics native. It's sort of a data-centric culture, but even taking it to the limit, right? And so the first one, by 2026, more than 25% of Fortune 500 CDAOs will have become responsible for at least one data and analytics-based product that becomes a top earner. Now, we already see many of you monetizing data. In fact, we have a great case study. BYN Mellon Bank is an excellent case study. They've taken their data and analytics platform and they've turned it into a commercial product. So, and we've got lots of case studies at Gartner of organizations that have done just that, but being responsible for a top earner. And that, again, I think with generative AI, potentially your products may change. How you serve customers will change over time. It's not going to be a year from now, maybe not two, but the potential and the opportunity for how you interact with customers, what your product looks like, is likely to transform, and that will be potentially part of your remit, and potentially in combination with the chief revenue officer, with the chief digital officer, if you're not already joined at the hip with them, or have a seat at the table, or work with them in some way. And don't stop at tactical outcomes. Think about the strategic opportunities that are in front of you. You are a business peer with you are a business peer with other executives, with other business people. Be that partner. You need to be that partner to have the impact. And again, with responsibility comes accountability. The days of sort of just delivering analytic content to our business partners without measuring the outcomes, as we again talked about in the keynote, we know that what gets measured gets done, and so what we need to take on is accountability for the outcomes that on the business, and that is the definition of a leader. And by the way, that's even at the personal level, right? Everyone in your organization, what it also means to be data and analytics native is that everyone in your organization, if you ask them, will know what they do and how they impact the business from a business value perspective. So, prediction number 8, by 2026, 50% of organizations will have to evaluate analytics and BI DSML platforms as all-in-one composable platform due to market convergence. So we've seen convergence across analytics and BI platforms. Again, you've seen the bake-off yesterday, you'll see the bake-off today. All of the platforms incorporate machine learning, automation, incorporate advanced analytics. That augmented analytics is sort of the convergence point between analytics and BI reporting, descriptive analytics capability, and more predictive and prescriptive. Leverage your cloud ecosystems. They are increasingly integrated across the analytics workflow, from data management to analytics and BI to data science and machine learning and even apps. Enable a best of breed strategy if that's what you want, taking a more headless architecture approach. Number 9, 2026, environmental sustainability will be a key criterion in over 60% of data management initiatives supported by financial governance practices. We also call them Finops. I think at least with the case of data, sustainability, often, boards prioritize it, but often balk at the cost because they're long-term and the outcomes and the payback are often financial influencing. But at least in the case of the cloud, there really is a win-win, right? There's environment and profit. But really push your vendors to give you information about their sustainability and the correlation to cost. That's an opportunity here. What is the carbon footprint that you're using? And that has potentially a really important cost benefit. Design your workloads, both on the data management side, but also on the AI side, for sustainability, and that will help you impact cost. I mean, we know that you've read it. ChatGPT was trained on like billions of parameters, huge energy consumption, and likely, we'll see as you adopt AI practices more and more, the carbon footprint will increase. So design for efficient workloads. We've already seen some of those costs come down with the recent ChatGPT API. Costs have gone down significantly. I expect that we'll see lots of innovation around processing, but for now anyway, you can begin to focus and link sustainability to FinOps if that's a priority for your organization. And then finally, by 2027, data science organizations will cut their technical debt by 70% by using simulation platforms and technologies to manage complexity in AI systems. So AI simulation platforms are emerging, and they're really well suited to essentially enact or enable you to assess real world and virtual world scenarios. Essentially, they provide an opportunity for you to build computational models that assess multi-agent models and even rare world use cases in a more effective way. So identify those platform components that you may already have. Try to leverage what you use. Uncover simulation efforts in your organization that may not be labeled as such. Of course, use cloud. That's sort of the best, most agile approach. Now, one of the things we like to, so that's our top 10. One of the things we like to do is to go back and look back at hit or miss. And so one of the things we actually got pretty right was a 2020 prediction where we said by 2023, cloud database management systems revenue will account for 50% of total DBMS revenue. Well, we actually hit that in 2021. Now, sadly, one of the ones we didn't get right, and this is sad for you, by 2022, we actually predicted that all major CSPs would eliminate egress charges due to competitive pressures. Well, sadly, that didn't happen, right? They all have them, save for one. I think it's Oracle with Microsoft on Microsoft Azure. But everyone else, no, they're still gouging you for egress. I hope that will change. I'm still hopeful. So I'd love to hear from you. I know we just have 30 more seconds. Which prediction do you think will have the most impact on your organization? Tweet me at @Sallam, hashtag. I'd love to hear from you. And just, a final thought, Understanding the impact of technologies, unfortunately, we usually think linearly when in fact things happen in fits and starts. Technology changes unevenly. That's why it's really important for you to think through the impacts of trends. Love this quote from Roy Amara: we overestimate the effect of trends in the short term and we underestimate them in the long term. If you think about the impact of the internet, I was around in the early 90s. Who could have predicted everything in the long term that we're seeing and will see that innovation and that disruption enabled? So thank you very much. I believe that the future is yours as data and analytics leaders, should you choose to define it. Take the reins. You got this. Bye. Have a great rest of conference.
We hope you enjoyed the session. If your next session is in this room, please remain seated. Otherwise, please make your way to your next location.